Our firm, Wagner Sidlowski, is a boutique litigation law firm in downtown Toronto. We are presenting this video/podcast on Part 5 of the Succession Law Reform Act. Let's join Brendan and Charles as they discuss an upcoming motion for summary judgment. Brendan, how are you doing? Have a seat.
Doing well, thanks.
You're in time for our podcast.
Great. Well, I have a question for you. I'm attending a summary judgment motion tomorrow, and I know that there's going to be a couple of arguments, and I was hoping to bounce them off you.
Go ahead.
Well, here are the facts. Our client is the mistress of the deceased, and she's applied under Part 5 of the Succession Law Reform Act for support. Now, I know that the judge is going to hear two arguments, and this is what they're going to be. The first one is this: how is it that a married man can also have a spouse who is his mistress, and that spouse can apply for support under the Succession Law Reform Act? The other argument is going to be this: how is it that the judge should step in and impose legal obligations on a man who, when he entered this relationship with his mistress, didn't enter a legal relationship?
Are you familiar with the Mahoney case?
Yes, Mahoney and King. I'm actually going to be citing it.
What are the facts?
The facts are very similar. There's a mistress, she's applying for support. The only difference is that she's applying for support under the Family Law Act instead of the Succession Law Reform Act. And in that case, the judge decided that just because she's a mistress and the other man is married, doesn't mean that she doesn't qualify as a spouse for the purposes of spousal support.
Good, good. Let's now talk about the two issues. Your first issue was bigamy, right?
More or less, yeah.
How can we have a person being legally married and at the same time incur support obligations to a quote-unquote spouse, correct?
Correct.
All right. My submission to the judge would be as follows. The legislation sets out the parameters of what a common law spouse is. It includes someone who's in that quasi type of marriage situation where it's a level of permanence, where they've been cohabitating. That fits with the mistress. And remember, bigamy is when a person enters into two legal marriages with different people. That's not the case here. People may feel that having a mistress is immoral. That doesn't make it illegal. It also doesn't take away the responsibility that a person enters into when he has a relationship. For example, married man takes a mistress. Through that mistress, he fathers a son. No one is going to argue that the son of the mistress and the married man is not a dependent of the married man.
That's true.
No one is going to argue that that son is not a dependent of the estate. So my submission to the court would be, just as that applies in that situation with the son, so too does it apply with the mistress. What was your next issue?
The next issue was, why should the court intervene and impose a legal obligation on a man, the deceased, when he himself didn't enter into a legal relationship with his mistress? He specifically didn't want to. He didn't marry her.
That was Professor McLeod's argument, right?
Yes.
On his comment on this case, right?
That's right.
It's a red herring. It really does not make sense. What is the difference between a person who is unmarried and takes on a mistress and a person who is married and takes on a mistress? Is the intent any different? It's not. But the legislation has said if you fall within the four corners of our definition of a spouse, you're a common law spouse for the purposes of support. It doesn't impact on the principle of marriage. It doesn't impact on imposing legal relations. The statute has done so. Those would be my submissions.
Thanks.
My name is Charles Wagner. I'm a partner at Wagner Sidlowski, and my friend Brendan Donovan is one of our associates. I'm also a specialist in estates and trusts. The purpose of this vignette was not to provide you with legal advice, No one can do that in a 3-minute podcast or video. Instead, our purpose was to show the listener or the viewer the complex analysis that lawyers go through in a Part 5 application for support under the Succession Law Reform Act. Often, I'm called by junior lawyers or lawyers outside the province who have a case involving these types of issues. And I'm more than happy to take their calls, and if you have any questions concerning this issue, I'd be more than happy to take yours. My name is Charles Wagner, and thank you for listening.